One of the things that strikes me when you see somebody the age of Joe Biden, and frankly the age of former President Trump, you think about who's turning out to vote, and it's skewing younger now. And it's interesting that each midterm and each election now, there are more and more young voters, Gen Zers now,
right.
I guess that's what they are, turning out to vote. And we'll have to break down what the effect has been, but that could have changed the direction of some of these, because
Very much so.
younger voters notoriously don't vote.
Right.
Right? But if they do turn out, how does that change your approach or your messaging?
And how do you reach them? Right. I mean,
Right.
Is there going to be TikTok campaign videos?
Oh,
Maybe there already are. I don't know.
Good point.
Yeah.
Because and then there are certain ballot measures that were on this year that maybe it brings out a certain response. Among them, abortion.
Yeah.
Another
Legalizing marijuana.
Legalizing marijuana. So let's continue the conversation. And some of the propositions that did pass and some got rejected. Let's bring in Republican strategist Ash Wright and ambassador for the America First Policy Institute and Newsmax contributor Jessie Jane Duff. Jessie, wanted to get your thoughts. We'll get to the overall issue, but the ballot measures themselves, which can be used, by the way, to turn out a vote. For instance, in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer was reelected, and it actually also happened to have a ballot measure on abortion there.
Well, one of the things that many Republicans failed at, conservatives in general, was a positive message. We kept talking about what Joe Biden was doing, the economy, everything negative. But what were our solutions? Things like Roe v. Wade being reversed. Conservatives were very ill prepared for that, and we didn't demonstrate that we supported women who were pregnant, unwanted pregnancies, people that were going to garner our support. Instead, we were so aggressive with promoting pro-life messaging. We forgot that there's many women out there that don't have the resources, and that's why they were in a panic. I saw many ads when I was traveling that were showing young women under the age of 25 going out and making sure that women understood that their rights to have an abortion were on the line. And that is the group that's probably at the most highest risk. Meanwhile, the conservatives did not get out and support the birthing centers, making sure that women knew they had resources. If you cannot win on your message, you will not win in your vote.
Yeah, Ash, do you think that Republican candidates campaigned incorrectly on the topic of abortion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they felt like voters were going to come out for the economy. That's what basically every Republican poll told them, that ultimately, and we talked about it on this show, which was ultimately that social issues would take a back seat to the economic issues, to inflation, to security. Republicans really wanted this, the security mom, I think was what they were calling them, to come out. And ultimately, in some of these left-leaning states and swing states, female college-educated women that live in suburban areas ultimately voted for women's rights and came out on that issue, and didn't come out on the issues that Republicans thought they were. I agree with Jane. I mean, part of the issue was that we spent a lot of time talking about how bad the economy was, but never really truly provided a solution or what we would do to fix it. And that's ultimately what we saw last night. And especially with these ballot measures, because these ballot measures, they are a reflection of how divided the country are. So there were 3 that voted against marijuana, 2 that voted for, multiple voted against abortion, like Arkansas, several others voted for abortions. And so that's what we saw, was that the country is ultimately divided. There were 137 ballot measures on the ballot last night in 37 states, and they were almost completely divided between how the states turned out. And you can see it up and down the ballot.
Jessie, I think everybody would agree, if there was a particular winner last night, it certainly seemed to be Ron DeSantis. He barely won his election 4 years ago, and then last night by 20 points. So is he the rising star? And if so, how does that affect Donald Trump, the future of the Republican Party? You generally know what I'm asking. I mean, this is the great question going on right now within the Republican Party.
Well, there is an overwhelming number of people that support Donald Trump. So if people who are pessimistic or negative say, well, we're just going to shift gears and jump to another candidate, they're going to do that at great peril. It will divide the party. What you have to do is ensure that the messaging is on point, albeit even Donald Trump's messaging. Donald Trump has focused largely on how people feel that they were disenfranchised in 2020, but sadly, a lot of that has gotten sour for voters. We have to speak again about what are we going to do for the future. Ron DeSantis did an amazing campaign. This is a great playbook. He held his own against the left. He ensured that he supported ballots from school board all the way down to mosquito catcher in Florida. He made sure that he did those fabulous endorsements. Let's watch what he did successfully. Talk about what you're going to do for your economy. Talk about what you can change with what Joe Biden is doing versus Joe Biden is horrible. He sucks. He's a lousy president.
Yeah.
You can't win on that. Win on what you can do, not what you cannot do.